How are you? How are you feeling about things?
Oh, that's a loaded question.
I know.
Um, well, real quick, just so I don't forget, and then we'll jump into it. I know, um, for November, I added a special recording note and a no recording date for the week of Thanksgiving. I was looking at December. I think I added the no recording on the 17th, which has now changed,
Oh, okay.
but I couldn't remember and I didn't want to delete it if that was the case.
It is on there still.
Right. I was saying I thought I added it, but I couldn't remember if it was me or you. And I didn't want to delete it until I confirmed.
I don't think that was me. Does
Okay.
it not say who adds it? I guess not.
No. Um, so I just deleted it because the week of the 17th changed to the week after Christmas for what we had planned
Okay.
because I didn't pay attention to school schedules when I booked things.
Oh.
So
Oh, is there school the week of the 17th?
yes.
I got it.
And so normally we do a trip before Christmas each year to a cabin. This year it will be after Christmas just because school is in session still. So,
Right. Okay.
okay.
I,
So
I see. I see. Because I guess they're in school through the 20th. Wow. It does. It just landed that way. I guess.
yeah, it's just an
Odd year.
yep. So I just made changes so that I didn't forget so that the calendar is accurate. All right. Now I feel better. And now we can go back to your question.
Okay, okay, so instead of doing a quadruple record night, we are doing a double.
Correct.
Okay.
Which is, I mean, we can still do a quadruple and skip one. It's not a big deal, but I think it's more manageable if we two doubles.
hmm I think so too.
Okay. So yeah, so the week of Thanksgiving, we decided we would drive up to Indiana to be with Emily's parents this time,
Oh, okay.
um, which was kind of a last minute thing. And we're going to drop Jacob off for the first couple of days and fly from Indiana to New York to watch The Great Gatsby and spend a night, and then
Oh,
fly back
cool.
to Indiana for the rest of Thanksgiving week. So
That's super cool.
yeah, we'll see.
Why do you say
Okay,
that?
I mean it is, but there's now a lot of travel in November and December, and I have a
Yeah.
feeling I'm gonna just be done because the 16th, 17th I'll be driving up to Nashville to compete,
Right.
and then
I think I knew that.
the following weekend, that Saturday, we'll drive up to Indiana to fly out Sunday to New York and fly back Tuesday. So there's just a lot quickly there, and
Yeah.
I tend to get tired of travel if it feels like I have to hustle. So it's going to depend a lot on whether I feel pressured or if it all just kind of feels not lackadaisical, but like a flow, you know?
Going with the flow.
Yeah. So we'll see which way it goes, but either way, should be a lot of fun.
Yeah. I bet so. Where are you staying in New York?
There is a Renaissance, I think it's Renaissance. It's part of the Marriott chain across basically the street from the theater, not too far south of Central Park.
Okay, so
Um,
Times Square area on the west side.
yeah, I'm trying to remember the exact address and I can't off the top. Actually, screw it. I just pull up the app real quick and tell you. Like, what am I doing? Uh, I booked the damn hotel. Residence Inn, New York, Manhattan, Central Park is the actual one, which is should give me the address, right?
I don't know if the address would really help because I don't,
1717 Broadway.
okay. See, I don't know. 17, so Broadway makes sense, but 1717 doesn't help.
Yeah,
So
so like looking at a map, it is roughly 5 to 6 blocks south of Central Park.
yep. Actually,
Or
Um,
technically, it'd be southwest, I guess. But
I was going to say, I would even say, let's see, 5.5 blocks from Columbus Circle.
well, Columbus Circle doesn't necessarily mean much of anything to me. So
Yeah, I know.
what's the specialty there?
Well, I was going to say there's only one Columbus Circle, and
Okay.
I would say walk up to Columbus Circle as you go to because it's Broadway. Broadway actually it doesn't terminate, but it Broadway runs through Columbus Circle, and then and Columbus Circle is the southwest corner of Central Park, and
Okay.
there's some cool statues there, and a fountain, and it's there's some high rises there, and I thought it'd be really cool to live in one of the high rises. If you keep going uptown a few more blocks, the Apple store that I worked at is maybe 7 or 8 blocks from uptown on Broadway.
Yeah. So the initial. So, all right. This is going to be story time, and then we'll have to come back. And this is more fun anyway. So maybe this will stay in. 3 or 4 nights ago, I don't remember where. I am known as the spontaneous one in general. Emily, very much not so.
I can see that. I can see that.
And Emily pitched the idea of, hey, I know we talked about going and visiting my parents for Thanksgiving. What do you think about leaving Jacob with them and doing like a flight to New York, watching a Broadway show, and then a quick flight back? And it's like, well, I'm okay with the idea, but I'm not doing it for same day, fly in morning, watch a show, maybe catch some sleep, fly out. If we're going to do it, we're going to do at least an overnight that is
Yes.
allowing enough time for me to just walk around. I don't care if we have anything specific to do, but I need to walk around. I need to be able to count it as I have spent some time in the city. And so it went from, all right, we'll fly out or fly into New York that morning, watch the show that night, fly out the next day, to fly in whatever flight we can get early on Sunday, watch the show Monday night. And so, whatever we do Sunday evening, Monday morning is just exploration, enjoyment. Watch the show Monday evening, check out, fly back Tuesday night, feels more relaxed, checks off the boxes for me. Like, I'm not planning anything for that time. I want time. And so that was how we agreed on it. But it was hilarious that it was her idea. And then I found out the motivation. So I don't know who the lead is in Gatsby. I know she said the name, but he's ending his stint January something. And so she was feeling pressured, if she wanted to see him perform, that this might be the only window, because there's no guarantee that we would have any availability in December. And then you turn around in January and we may or may not have a reason to go, or any way to drop Jacob off, because it's not worth paying for a ticket for Jacob.
Right. And he's not even going to like it.
Yeah. And,
my kids wouldn't be like, I don't think it depends on what the show is. Probably not that show.
I do think Jacob would enjoy going to a show. It's just
I'm
not willing to pay $200 for him to go to a show.
Right. Whereas maybe like $50 to see something, and maybe even a little more, one of the Disney shows.
And he went with Emily to see The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. I don't remember if it was like on ice or what, but it was a production here in Birmingham, and enjoyed it. So, but yeah, it was funny that it was not me coming up with hey, do you think we can pull off a spontaneous flight to New York and back for a change? And so it's just, bucking trends left and right. Anyway, that's it for the fun aside. I do want to talk about how I feel. And I know I put a few notes, but the few notes were a combination of, before we decided to move recording a day, and post recording, or post moving. And I don't know that I necessarily want to touch on the notes. They're just there for me to think about what else I've thought about, if that makes sense.
It does.
So this has been very much a mental hurdle and a process today, because I'm outraged from the standpoint of thinking maybe basic human decency will actually ever make some sort of comeback and result in line with those premises. And somewhat apathetic, because in the grand scheme of things, I'm not the one that's going to be hurt the most by this course of events.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a ridiculously privileged standpoint for me to look at it as, you people really fucked up your future and you don't even realize it. And being just as angry as you can possibly imagine that this is the shit that we decided to go with as a majority. And it's difficult to reconcile. I think the way I put it, because it's not often that I post blog posts anymore. It used to be far more of an outlet for me from a writing perspective. But I posted something today, and the general gist was, it'd be real easy just to give up, or just to be quiet, or just to kind of retreat into my own internal world and shell and go with the flow and see out the next few years. And I would probably have a few things that are going to be of fairly significant impact with regard to cost of goods, but everybody's going to feel those. And that's really about it. Go ahead.
I think we've been feeling that for the last 4 years. To be fair,
so we'll come back to that, because I have a lot there. But in the grand scheme of the immediate 4 years, I'm not going to feel anything significantly different, other than, and this is where my big concern lies, if Musk and RFK Jr. get enough power and control over certain things, they could really fuck up my day-to-day.
I can see that.
And I have a lot of concerns about that. But I also know that I am intelligent enough to navigate those problems if I have to. It's an inconvenience, and it's not something I want to deal with, but I can manage. Which ultimately brings me to my conclusion for the day on how I feel. I feel numb to an extent, because I bet on some level of human decency being involved in the vote, and it was repudiated pretty harshly. And at the same time, I'm in a privileged enough position that I'm not really going to feel what's coming. Theoretically, obviously there can be exceptions. But the big thing is, I'm not going to feel it like the people who voted for this outcome, hoping for change, are going to find themselves feeling problems.
I've had a similar feeling. So it's kind of interesting. I'm upset, as you would expect. Really upset. Highly disappointed in the United States. And I, like you, had the same thought that I don't think I'll feel any immediate effects because of the privilege I was born with. And I was telling my children that, because, I have two I got a teenage and preteen son. And I've told them that, the amount of privilege that you have, you're probably not going to be feeling this, but our place as privileged white passing men, in my case, white passing, they're whiter than me. Well, I don't think they're too brown to be, I don't think they're too brown to be white. I think they get a little more. They just tan really well in the summer, and it just looks like, people are jealous of that.
I just never would have even thought about describing them in such a fashion. So
Me either.
I had to laugh.
So, so I told them that, the thing is that I'm concerned about is like some long lasting effects that's gonna be problematic for all of us, especially their generation and the following. But I did tell them. So the two things I told them that I really wanted, that I emphasized, was you have a certain level of privilege based on how what you were born as, that you might not feel a lot of this right now, or at all perhaps, but as people that were born with this level, the highest level of privilege, because the only way to get more privilege as a white man in this country is wealth and power. That's you cannot. Yeah, you really can't. You can't be born with more privilege. And so I said, our place is to bring the people that aren't born with that privilege and try to bring them up to our level. We don't need to, we don't need to bring ourselves down, but we want to bring them up to our level. And the other thing I said was everything that happens in the next 4 years can be undone. It might be really hard to undo it. Some things might be seemingly impossible to undo there, but I think most things can be undone. The only thing that concerns me is global warming and other environmental issues. That's the only thing that, even those things can be undone to some degree. Like, our ozone layer had a hole, now it doesn't, or it's almost completely closed back. So there is that, but again, it's like how much the people that have the least amount of privilege are going to suffer first and most and longest. But things can be undone. I was like, the 4 years that Trump was in office, for his first term, he undid some things that were done, that had been done for almost 50 years. Now they're undone, so they can be redone. Again, it's just we're having to put effort into things that we already did, and so that's a bit frustrating. But that's kind of where my hope is. And then beyond that, I told them Trump is a symptom of a problem, and the problem is Americans who just don't know and don't care. I remember I was telling my sister, I said, I guess this shouldn't have been a surprise to us, because there were so many people that we, first of all, had to explain again and again and argue with why you should wear a mask in public during a pandemic. And then if they did wear the mask, reluctantly or not, there was continual explanation of why you have to wear it correctly. So in that regard, I guess we shouldn't be surprised. It's just really disappointing.
I thought about that a lot today, because, and we've discussed at length different stereotypes with regard to generations. I wanted the outcome to be differently, but I expected the outcome to be what we got. And I don't know if that helped. I know, so I stayed up last night. And
Me too.
Until CNN was calling the race. And that was premature, but it was kind of at a point where I had, for the previous 3 or 4 hours, I had already felt like they were accurate. And I had mentally called it for myself. And it's not that there was an expectation of failure as much as it was I wanted to believe that there was more of a movement behind some level of basic decency and a repudiation of racism and a repudiation of bigotry
and misogyny.
And I knew that wasn't the case. And I knew it wasn't the case because for over a decade, we have been inundated with versions of that same messaging, and people have just tweaked it in a way to make it sound less direct, with the exception of what we see from the higher levels of officials who are elected. but that in day-to-day conversation, people still had that basic mentality, but were attempting to craft their message ever so slightly to not sound that way. And to say 10 years is overselling how long, or underselling how long, rather. Like this has been for as long as I remember. It's just I wasn't truly focused on the verbiage and listening to it until about a decade, maybe a little over a decade ago. And that to me has been a continual source of questioning whether progress has been made as progress or if progress has been made as regulation. And I only kind of see it through that secondary lens at this point, that there are a large number of people, especially in rural areas, who still would prefer women be seen and not heard, for example. And that's what we see play out, that they accept that women have a voice, but they still want to control it. Or they accept that minorities have a voice, but they still want to diminish it as much as possible. And it's not limited to rural America. It's just far more prevalent in rural areas in the day-to-day interactions than what you hear in more urban areas. But it's present everywhere. And I that recognition of those undercurrents and tones has been consistently gnawing at the back of my mind through all of these elections, because I saw that be a driving force in 2016. And I was surprised in 2020 when we got a little bit of a breath of fresh air. But I really expected 2020 to go differently. And so I think in retrospect, as I was watching the election results unfold, I was just back to, I already expected it to go this way. And so it was less surprising, but no less disappointing and no less disheartening, for lack of better phrasing.
Yeah. I was going to say by 10 o'clock p.m. or before 10 p.m., I knew it wasn't. And
I think it was around the same time for me. Yeah.
I also started having thoughts about like, oh, we still hate women in this country, because it felt very much like the 2016 election day with Clinton. And it was just like people just don't want to vote for a woman, much less a woman of color. And yeah,
so I know I mentioned that phrasing, but the exact way I put it earlier to my spouse was, for all the progress we've made, there are still too many people who believe women should be seen and not heard.
Yes. I think that when you were talking about the past decade of prejudice against skin color, misogyny and bigotry, I think, and maybe I'm wrong, but that's around the time when they started saying the quiet parts out loud, and a lot of it was brought on by the Trump campaign, and starting in 2015, and it. He emboldened people. And again, I'll say, he is a symptom of a problem. And, last night, or I guess even going into the day, like waking up yesterday morning and going to vote, I thought it's like, okay, if it's close, it's going to get ugly. It's going to get messy, because he's not going to just concede. And I don't see this being a blue wave. I don't see that happening either. It'd be a pleasant surprise, but I didn't see that happening. And as the night went on, beyond closer to midnight, and it was like there's definitely no path forward. There was a point where I was like, oh, all he needs is Alaska, and Alaska is definitely going to go to he's going to get those electoral college votes. It's definitely going to go to him. There's no path forward for Harris and Walz. That it was just, I started thinking about how the this was not a he didn't have to try to steal this election. He won outright. This is not something that you can blame the Electoral College on, because it's an antiquated voting system that no other modern democracy uses. And so that hurts differently. You got what you're gonna get. You're gonna get what you asked for, and it made me it made me think of a few things, but that might be a little bit too esoteric. But the phrase the phrase my spouse and I started throwing around was Schadenfreude. Are you familiar? I would expect that you are.
Familiar?
Yeah, I thought so. But I guess for any listener who's not, it's the emotional experience. It's a German phrase, and it's the emotional experience of pleasure in response to another's misfortune. But I don't think there's going to be much pleasure. So, and I was talking to my sisters, like, folks fucked around yesterday. One day of fucking around for 4 years of finding out, or more.
So it's the very first thing that came to mind this morning. And I didn't know the exact phrasing. I actually had to go double check the quote. But I did post it. What I posted was a quote by Hamilton that said, "A nation which can prefer disgrace to danger is prepared for a master and deserves one." Obviously, contextually, very different scenarios. But the part that got me was the last little bit. And that was the first part that came to mind. And so I went back and researched it a little bit to make sure I had it right. Because even though contextually it was very different, the overall meaning of this country got what it deserves is very present. Even though many of us don't like it, the fact of the matter is, it's an overwhelming majority that decided that this is the path the country's going to go. And it's not what a group of us deserve, but it's absolutely what the country deserves for the way that it approached the election. And that's not even going into the other potential implications of really, if you want to dissect the quote, there's a lot you can go into. But just thinking about the act of a democracy and your actions in a democracy and you getting the result you deserve every single time, that was what came to mind. That was what really I had to go look for how I would convey that in a way that wasn't me yelling and ranting and just being a lunatic. And that quote by Hamilton was the first thing that came to mind.
One of the things that came to mind for me was the 92 election between Clinton and Bush and Perot. And I remember thinking about how so many voters voted voted H.W. Bush out of office because of domestic economy. I think also Perot pulled some numbers away from Bush as well. But I was 11 for that election, so I wasn't too in tune. But I think my 11-year-old today was probably more in tune with this election than I was for that one. But I can remember my family just being so concerned that Clinton was going to be in office and that the country was going to fall apart. But it was based on a sense of his policy didn't line up with their morality, but there wasn't concern that he was going to essentially disassemble functioning important parts of the government and government agencies, which is a concern today. And it made me think, I was like, all of the some of the older generations, like, what's going to happen if RFK is like, yep, guess what? Medicare, you don't need that anymore. It's gonna create a lot of Schadenfreude.
And The overall conversational theme of the day for us has been I don't like wishing ill on people in general at all. And I
Me
don't
either.
really want people to suffer. But this is one of those odd scenarios where I know full well the ramifications of what we're about to enter. And I kind of hope you feel it. And you feel it fast. And you realize that you're not going to get what you think you get out of this election. And it's not that I want harm on the people in general, but I want them to recognize that this was not a positive choice and to recognize it within the first 6 months of the next Trump presidency. And unfortunately, I don't necessarily think it's going to happen that way either. But it's the closest I have ever come to wishing a group of people sincere ill will. And it's not born out of anything other than a desire for people to wake the fuck up and see what they're actually looking at. And I used this example. I'm going to see if maybe it helps put it in perspective. The top of the ticket in this election didn't matter. If Trump was in office or if Harris was in office, things were going to go pretty much along the same line they've gone with every other election, where the winning group is not going to get this bright and rosy future that they expect to get, and the losing group is not going to get this apocalypse that they expect to get. It's never the extremes.
No, we're all going to be in the same boat.
Well, the exception is that in this particular case, there's an unknown variable at play where Trump has already stated that he would allocate or direct or otherwise convey or confer specific responsibilities to specific individuals prior to the election. And those individuals both represent sincere threats to the areas that they would have some level of control or to exert power over. One of those being Musk, with essentially a mandate to find and eliminate anything that is inefficient. And given the acquisition and subsequent destruction of Twitter as an example, I really can't see how I would be excited about his role in doing something similar with the federal government. I will maybe reserve judgment for how that shakes out, like whatever.
No, you're right. You're right.
And then RFK Jr. is a renowned conspiracy theorist with regard to health. And he has basically been given the ability to go wild with healthcare. And I am at an age where I need my healthcare to not be fucked.
Mm-hmm.
That presents a threat to my life, potentially. Again, I feel fortunate that I am intelligent enough and I have the connections and resources to probably navigate this without much of an issue. But that is scary as hell. And those two things are the real problems coming out of this election, more so than Trump himself being the president, because that could be mitigated with rationality and understanding and non-conspiracy theorists in places to check anything that could go too far off the rails. But we already knew going into the election that he was going to put in place people who would do whatever he told them to do. That's the scary part. And that's the part that we're going to see how it plays out. And we're going to hope that it's not as bad as it could be. But that's the difference between this election and every other election previously.
It's funny. I just thought of this just now, and that this is very much going to be like the kingdom of Agrabah. Because Trump, I think we've talked about this pretty recently, but Trump is He he wants the attention. He wants the positive attention. He wants people fawning over him and so forth. And it does, the actual power that people in these positions tend to seek is not what he's looking for. He's looking for recognition and people to fawn over him and so forth. And I mean, I watched his the speech he gave last night, and it's clear. I mean, it's just he wants to be the figurehead. He wants to be the one who's like praised and so forth. And that was the case in 2016, and he put a lot of his family in to work in the West Wing, and you wouldn't necessarily say that they were well organized. He lost in 2020, and there was 4 years for people to like start backing him. And the concern is that there's a Jafar now, and it's a lot of people that are the Jafar who want to actually rule. They don't need to be the person sitting behind the desk in the Oval Office. They want to get their agenda done. My analogy breaks down because Jafar did eventually become the Sultan, and he did want to have that position, but
I wouldn't say it breaks down yet. Because remember, Trump is 78. There's a just as equal a chance that he dies in office as that he sees his term through.
Well, then it's J.D. Vance sitting behind the desk in the Oval Office,
right? I don't know that I think that's better.
I don't know that it's better, but there was a point in time where he was vocally critical about Trump. And then he realized that he needed Trump to win an election, so he, sold his soul to the MAGA cult, and that's how we have. That's how he's. I can't remember where their desk is because vice presidents aren't that important, especially when their party has a majority. So, that was a bit tongue in cheek. I hope that comes across.
No, it's fine.
I mean, do you know what office? It's somewhere over there.
Yeah, I do not know exactly where the office is. No.
Anyway, I assume
they have two technically, because there is an office in the congressional building somewhere.
Right, because of the Senate, because they oversee the Senate, and I guess they have a residence as well. So, I don't know.
That's a good point. I don't think I've ever heard of the vice presidential residence.
I feel like I definitely noticed it watching The West Wing, but I don't remember what it is. And I'm pretty sure they talked about it. I think I heard it when Vice President Harris I feel like maybe on Inauguration Day in 2020 that I might have heard that. Anyway, I did look it up. It's the Eisenhower Executive Office Building, located next to the West Wing on the White House premises. The office is called the Vice President's Ceremonial Office, served as the Navy Secretary's office when the EOB House housed the state, Navy, and War departments. Today, the Vice President uses the office for meetings and press interviews. So they also have they actually do have an office in the West Wing, but the staff maintain a set of offices in the Eisenhower Executive Office Building. So,
well, I can see that. I mean, that makes sense.
There's probably that's at least two. That's at least two on the White House grounds. So, one day I'll read this. I'll read this, and when I'm interested, go down that hole. But yeah, I it's possible in 2 years during the midterm elections, the House and the Senate might flip again. That's a possibility. There's hope there, and that will. Well, it's not that Democrats haven't been very good at stymieing a president like the Republicans have been with Democratic presidents. I don't understand why the Democratic Party just loses so goddamn much.
So this was also a topic of conversation today. They're too fractured. There's no strategy. It is not a well-oiled machine. And say what you will about the GOP, they know how to run an election cycle. They know how to get their message out. They know how to mobilize their base. They know how to appeal to a certain subset of individuals, and they know how to run with it. And we may not like it, but they do a really damn good job of it.
Oh no, they do. And why is it that it's like, why are Republicans so good at going to the polls? Why are Democrats so fucking bad at going to the polls?
Because Democrats still want to believe in the message that it doesn't really matter what we say, good will eventually win.
Fuck that.
And Republicans are willing to say, this is the problem and this is what you need to do to fix it. Whether it's true or not, that's the difference in messaging.
But don't they remember the only thing necessary for the triumph of evil is for good men to do nothing? Go fucking vote.
So I saw a thing. I have not researched to see if this is accurate, but it is something that I plan to do when I'm not coping or processing in general. Apparently, Trump did not actually grow his support. If you go back and look at the comparative vote, it's just that the support wasn't there on equal or better terms for Harris.
Right.
And if that's the case, which I have no reason to doubt based on the very minimal glancing that I did, then you effectively had the Democrats being unable to turn out enough people to vote because they were apathetic about the message or protesting the choice or whatever the case may be. It was, we're just not going to show up. And if that's the case, then it makes a lot more sense.
I believe that to be the case, and there's nothing intelligent about that strategy. Actually, that is a dumb strategy.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, I don't even have an analogy that I want to use here.
There is no good one.
There's no. It's just like, yeah, there's probably one. I'll think of it for next time, but
I've tried to think of one today. There's no good one so far, because it's equivalent to saying, I'm going to take my ball and go home, or I'm just not going to spend my money here. But that doesn't work in politics, because for every person who decides to protest by not being engaged, there's at least 3 more people who are going to say, you know what, I'll talk to you, or I'll vote, or I'll do whatever. In the sphere of politics, there is no room for deciding not to participate. It's the only thing that there is just no margin for not being involved.
We have a number of different ways set up for you to get in touch with us to provide feedback, ask questions, or just comment in about something we've discussed.
You can hit us up on Twitter or Instagram at untitled_hosts, or shoot an email over to untitled.hosts@gmail.com.
Or get in touch directly with Jesse at jthart.com, or get in touch with me, John, via telepathy.
If you would like to support our work or are interested in listening to our new after show feed, head over to patreon.com/theUntitledPodcast and take a look at the options we have set up.
Thank you for listening.
We hope you've enjoyed the show.
And we hope to connect with more of you as we continue this journey.
That's a wrap. So I'm good with that, but I do want to add in one more thing that has been a topic today.
Yeah.
Because it's not going to be overly surprising.
Well, I was going to say, this is, probably good for an outro. I like that you've been adding little things after the outro.
It's probably a good after show or after outro type thing. I am very strongly considering saying, fuck it, I will run in the next election cycle?
Ever since between 9 and 10 o'clock last night, I've been thinking it's time to fight.
So, and that's kind of what brought this thought to mind.
It's the same feeling.
Do you? I don't remember the name, unfortunately. On the ballot, there was a particular race where there was a Democrat that was her name was Elizabeth something. I don't remember the last name. She elected to run only because the other person was running unopposed, and her thought was, "I'm not going to do anything other than put my name on the ballot." But on principle, no race should be unopposed. And ended up getting 100,000 votes with minimal effort. And it's...
Did she win? She didn't win, did she?
No, not even close. Okay. But the point is, for the past however many elections, every unopposed election, I have written my name in as a write-in instead of voting for whoever is running unopposed. Purely on principle. And if I'm going to do that, then why don't I at least do either that same thing and run opposite the particular person on the other party ticket? Or what I'm very strongly considering is I'm going to run on a Republican ticket and I'm going to give these particular talking points and win as a Republican and let them think that these views are Republican views, because that's what a decent human being would do in the first place. Damn the labels.
I like that strategy.
And so I'm very seriously starting to feel out and consider, what does this look like? What are the requirements? Because for all my faults, I'm not a fucking convicted felon, which means the bar for me to run is ridiculously lower than ever before.
Yeah. I'm angry about that too, because that's gonna set some precedents that are not okay.
You know, I'm torn about that one. I really am, and it's because of the educational background exclusively, not because of anything else. That I do believe in the idea of rehabilitation and second chances and everything else. I do think we get it completely wrong at every level. So I'm not saying our system is decent or working or anything else. But I do believe that you could be someone who made a mistake, went to jail, served your time, got out, and could make a difference as a rehabilitated individual. And I have trouble reconciling that with our current system, because our current system penalizes having been convicted in the first place.
Right. I think that, our current system is about, it's kind of tit for tat, in that you did something bad, so we're going to do something bad to you. And the penalty, the penalization of our system doesn't work. I mean, I get that it will prevent certain people from doing bad things because, they were already probably decent to begin with. But that doesn't fix the problem. It just creates a whole bunch of other problems. Whereas if our justice system was about actually fixing problems, that would be great. And I think convicted felon, felons can't vote. Am I right?
It depends on the state.
Okay.
And this is why it gets problematic, because in some states, felons can eventually vote after a time delay or other certain criteria. And so, infamously, I think it was last election, Florida had problems that they called out as voter fraud because of certain felons voting because they were eligible to, and other felons who had told they were eligible to who were not eligible to, like whatever. There was confusion around
I remember that now.
That thing. But it's left to each individual state. And some states say, nope, convicted felony means you can't vote, you can't own a firearm, you can't do whatever, ever, etc. And other states, it's after a certain amount of time. And other states, it's after whatever other prerequisites are met.
Well, I feel like with voting, it's like, well, while you're serving time, perhaps you lose your privilege to vote. But once you're done serving time, you may vote again. I feel like that's a reasonable thing. Firearms may be a different, but
there is no reason whatsoever to think that a person who has been convicted of a crime is unable to vote once they are no longer serving any incarceration time.
right.
I mean, that is very much a law that was driven to help restrict the vote for other reasons, not because a person was a convicted felon.
Well, yeah, when your mandatory minimums incarcerate people of color at a much higher rate than white folks, yeah, that's absolutely a way to prevent people of color from voting. I wanted to be direct.
Yeah, no, I agree with.
I got what you were
absolutely
laying
agree. And to compound it, every single study ever done has proven without a shadow of a doubt that deterrence theory, which is the entire point of a punitive criminal justice system, does not work. It is ineffective. It does not create change. It simply does not work. And yet we continue year after year to pump money into a punitive criminal justice system in the hope that we will deter crime when we know better scientifically. And who do you think drives that direction? The fear-mongering of politicians claiming that you have to get tough on crime because, by God, it's everywhere and it's a problem. And how else are we going to get to a better tomorrow if you don't elect me to finally finish or take control or rein in this crime problem?